Now, what these women organisations will tell you is that men are the perpetrators, men are the violent ones, men are the really aggressive and controlling ones. Well, there's lots of reasons for that. For one thing, they've got responsibility. As a father, they have big responsibilities, and they will challenge anyone who puts their children at risk. Now, their children are more at risk from unrelated adults than they are from the parents. And if you think about it with domestic violence courses and such, there are people, women, in some of the safest areas of the UK. Domestic violence, 0.46%. What that means is, every 210 years, 3 consecutive lifetimes, it means that a woman born when Napoleon was retreating from Russia, still alive today, may or may not have experienced one incident of domestic abuse. Now, I'll tell you what else they discovered as well as, and this is not just in the rural northern areas and such remote places, as islands and such. This was happening in the big cities. The significant part with it being a very old research was that they went round the old people's homes, and first of all they gave them a cognitive test to see if they could remember incidents, to see what their memory was sharp enough to recall things accurately. And they did exceptionally well, because the people that had a good memory, they were asked certain questions, one of them being, can you recall any incidents of domestic violence? And these people could remember very, very accurately. And in their memory, in their living memory, they could remember very, very few incidents of domestic violence. Very rare. Why was that, do you think? Why is it that some statistics indicate that there are places where domestic violence is 0.46%? How is that? Who's protecting those women? You've probably figured it out, who's protecting them. Their husbands, fathers, brothers, grandfathers, all the whole family are protecting them, looking after their women, looking after their children. That's the role of a man, to protect and provide. Now, admittedly, you look at the kind of jobs we do. I, for example, was a roofing contractor. We must have been blinking balmy climbing up on roofs in some of the weather that we had to climb on. This was the kind of risks that men take. Men are the risk takers. Not the most violent necessarily, but we're definitely the risk takers. That is why we pay more for our car insurance. You can't say that women aren't violent. They are. On occasions they are. It's a very controversial thing, but I believe it was Jordan Peterson who cited a research that was done in the Bronx to find out what kind of violence, different types of violence there were between young, I think they were students, but young men and young women. And he says that the women tend to go for character assassination, which is exactly what the social services want. They want to slag off the fathers. They want everybody to think that men and fathers are the most violent people on the planet. Now, this is a real bone of contention, because they get people who are unqualified, untrained, inexperienced, and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they ask women, oh, was he violent? Did he do this? Oh, well, that's controlling behaviour. That's abuse, and all these different things, interpretations, when they're not qualified to do these things. But they will encourage women to do that because of what's called 30 pieces of silver, all the benefits you get from divorcing a man. And bearing in mind, I think it's 80%, between 80% and 90%, depends on your level of education. But the main partner for splitting a relationship apart is the woman. Men have more to lose. Women have everything to gain. That's just the way the law works. We've been living with a two-tier legal system for decades, generations. So we know what it's all about. And There's people who lose their business, 80-90% of their business, and the same with their property and everything else. And they're just kicked out of their home. They become homeless, and the suicide rates amongst men is horrific. If they were married. Not quite as bad if they never married. So that tells you something. So the safest, happiest families are dedicated, loving, caring families. If they come across a problem, they know how to deal with it. They resolve the issue. The families will have like a clan meeting. What we're going to do about this, that, or whatever. Meanwhile, there's always somebody in the family who'll take care of the children until this couple sort themselves out. That's why they very rarely experience any violence. That's why their children are happier, healthier, and they achieve 30% higher grades than average. That's why they achieve so much, and why they reach what we call pure happiness, pure joy in having a loving, caring relationship with each other and their family, and having the safety and comfort of being surrounded by family members, some of whom would be quite capable and quite willing to risk their lives to save you and your children. You think about that for a minute. The only man on God's earth who will put his life in front of anything that threatens his children, you or the women or their children, that would be the father and husband. So just to keep that in mind, next time you go to a domestic violence course or whatever, just keep that in mind. And if you want to know the true statistics, it's actually between 85 and 90% of all domestic violence is perpetrated by the maternal family and friends. The chances of a father ever harming his own children are extremely rare. And we know this because it was 2005. It was Every Child Matters. And it was a big research survey between thousands and thousands of families and children, parents. And they discovered that single dads, children of single dads, were multiple times safer, happier, and they achieved just as much as if they'd been brought up by both parents. The only slight difference was an average 5% lower grades than average, school grades than average. That was the only difference between them. The vast majority of abuse, violence, all these horrible things that people talk about or daren't talk about, they were perpetrated by friends and family of the mother. Now, I tell you where the deception comes in. I looked after offenders for a lot of years, different types of offenders. And I won't go into the details, but I did manage to get a lot of information out of them, mainly because, I'll tell you the reason anyway, but the main reason was because I specialised in violent young men. I think it's a character flaw on my part why I should do that, want to do that. Now, the good thing about that was that when I was doing my research, if I ever got one of these guys, offenders, on their own, they were all doing the same thing. They were all saying to the child, "Call me Dad." So when the kid goes to school and somebody says, "Well, who did that to you?" They go, "My dad did it." So that's it. It gets written down as being the dad, and it isn't the dad at all. The dad's nowhere near. They did that with little Daniel Pelker, where they reported it as being the father, and it wasn't the father, it was the mother's boyfriend. Anyway, the thing is that they're deceiving the newspapers, deceiving the media, they're deceiving the courts, they're deceiving the magistrates, and they're deceiving the judges and the sheriffs. They're deceiving everyone into believing that dads are the worst perpetrators ever for children, and total opposite is true.